right? Who's really behind it and what's the story? We want to know. We brought that to you, so please, let's continue. Before we're looking into who's behind the ChatGPT, we have to take a look into ChatGPT's development process. In particular, its environment. During the ChatGPT's development process, the simplified Chinese database, according to reliable sources, was developed in conjunction with the CCP regime, but more in particular, is actually using databases located in mainland China in the said process. Now, there's another point, says in the communist China, all the available search engines you use have to be compliant and be censored by the CCP according to the CCP's requirement. The intention is very simple, to brainwash Chinese people. So the database located in mainland China in the said process, that point I want to expand a little bit, because according to the CCP's new laws, that any kind of data that is stored in mainland China had to be accessible by the CCP's State Ministry of State Security and several other intelligence institutions. Now we may wonder, that may look very similar to what happened in other countries, but I have to mention clearly, it is a CCP going to access those databases. And those databases have to be compliant with the CCP standards to delete anything that the regime did not like. Continue. With those facts in mind, dissent opinions against the CCP are either censored or silenced, in addition to the internet commentators employed by the CCP, and it's actually impossible for you to see any dissent opinions and hear any facts against the CCP agenda in that kind of environment. That turns every single Chinese who lived under that environment becomes a victim of the CCP's tyrannical totalitarian rule. Now, we see this picture. Let's jump to see who is the real mastermind behind the OpenAI. Of course, ChatGPT is developed by OpenAI, and of course it belongs to OpenAI. But there are three important details with the OpenAI's investors. These three are Bedrock Capital, Sequoia Capital, and the Tiger Global Management. All have ties to the CCP, but let me explain them quickly. The first two, Bedrock Capital and Sequoia Capital, they are in one way or the other connected to the very powerful CCP's political family, of which they are being referred to as kleptocrats. And the last one is having a huge number of shares of the CCP affiliated entities at least it's certain that in the past, because the Tiger Global Management did indeed invest in a lot of these CCP entities. It even invested in Tiger Global Management, even invested TikTok and ByteDance. So even though we all know that the Tiger Global Management sold out its shares of those CCP entity stocks, so why does the Tiger Global Management involve in this investment that has two of the capital funds related to the CCP? Think that by yourself. With those questions in mind, let's continue. Because it is not just enough to looking into those three entities. We also have to look into a very important link, and that important missing link is called the Microsoft. Now, OpenAI, the developer of the ChatGPT, we already saw that its primary investor is called the Microsoft Corporation, along with 8 other investors. And of course, Microsoft made an additional $10 billion investment into the OpenAI, according to Bloomberg's news report in this year. On February the 7th, so what it happens is Microsoft announced that it would incorporate ChatGPT into its search engine Bing. Now, I have to stop here for a while because I have to expand a little bit about what is search engine Bing. Bing search engine's arrangement. So Bing search engine can be accessed in the Communist China, and the Bing search engine, since it could be accessed in the Communist China, Microsoft has to comply. How does it comply? Bing search engine's little twists. Its simplified Chinese version results are from Zhihu, and Zhihu answers are censored by the CCP. Even more exact, it's not only being censored by the CCP, the way it lets its users posting content has to be compliant with the CCP's rules and regulations. That basically means not much of a freedom of speech on the website. Zhihu is also invested by the CCP affiliated entities. These include Baidu, Tencent, and several others. More importantly, according to Mr. Miles Guo's granted live stream, some investors of the ChatGPT is closely tied to the CCP powerful families. These include Niall Shen and, oh, wait a second, there's a very familiar name comes up. Oh, Wei Jianshan. Niall Shen is the chair of the Sequoia Capital, and Wei Jianshan is the chairman of the Pacific Alliance Group. And Niall Shen is also an agent of the CCP, just like Wei Jianshan. What does that tell you? Do I have to explain more? I don't think I have to, right? So that means Microsoft's, those three capital funds and the OpenAI's investment has a huge, but a certain network that connects the OpenAI and the ChatGPT and its own interest and its future development to the CCP regime, one way or the other. Now, let's do a very quick look at one of the investors to help resolve some of the questions you may have. Because I know some of the people see that there's a Bedrock investment, and people may say, David, Bedrock is an American company. How come does that company is being connected to CCP? Not until you see this. Well, this is Bedrock Capital HK Limited. It's also, well, it's a platform for the Bedrock in the United States to get its money from. So what does this platform forms up? It formed up by Kinetic, which is a Hong Kong-based fund, and wait for it, the third red circle is China Vanke. So what is the relationship between Kinetic and China Vanke? Let's continue. Okay, so what it reveals to us is Kinetic is a joint venture between Vanke and the CPP Investment Board. What is CPP Investment Board? Well, it relates back to the retirement funds. CPP Investment Board is the Canadian investment board of all the Canadian pension funds. And Vanke, according to Mr. Miles Guo's live stream in the past, Vanke is the largest real estate company in the Communist China. And according to Mr. Miles Guo, it is a tool to suck the Chinese people's wealth. Also, you think that is not enough to support the claim? Well, Vanke has cooperation with Paul Hastings, and Paul Hastings is a part of the CCP's unrestricted lawfare against Chinese dissidents. Also, in order to become the largest real estate company in the Communist China, do you think is it possible to be completely be done by one person? Impossible. Unless you have affiliation to one of those CCP's political powerful parties, which that basically effectively ties you up with the CCP. So now that concludes who really owns OpenAI and ChatGPT. And thinking back to those very abnormal answers we've just seen earlier, I don't think I have to explain any further. At least we can say that all those abnormal answers are connected to the CCP in one way or the other. So before we end, we would end this live stream with these little open questions for all of us. So should we start? So the one we have to ask ourselves right now is, should we not start raising ethical concern about using this type of AI chatbots in the future for everything? Should we become too reliant on this kind of AI chatbots? Isn't it the time for us to really start using multiple sources to cross-check the things that is spun up by the ChatGPT? And the most important thing is, isn't this a time for us to discuss the CCP's infiltrations and manipulations of the US public opinion? Isn't this a time for us to raise our concerns about the CCP's infiltration into our media, into our technological field, into our judicial system?